There's something simple that you can do today to start seeing improvements in your pace immediately. I'm Marian, welcome to the channel, and let me show you why subtle tire management is so important and how top drivers are doing it every single lap. Now let's imagine you're following someone around the track. You are quite close, but you know that in the next corner you won't overtake him. You know you will just stay behind him. What all the top drivers are doing in order to conserve tires and basically have better pace later in the race when it's needed, not in this corner where we won't gain anything if we push, is to coast into the braking zone. So as you can see here in the trace, we're dropping the throttle, we're not braking yet because we want to make sure we won't overlap the throttle trace with the brake to avoid overheating the tire unnecessarily. So we don't do that, we just wait patiently, apply the brakes. Obviously we're gonna brake a bit earlier, and then while we corner, we try to not trail brake or to make minimal trail brake. We don't want to put more energy into the tires more than is needed, and also when we corner and we drop the throttle, it's better to do just a lift instead of adding that trail brake. It's most of the time better when following someone around because you'll have more tire life to make the move if you're not overheating unnecessarily. So right now I'm going to show you one more clip of that. You see no overlap initially, no overlap when pressing the throttle, that's also key, so having that little gap before and after the brake. And while cornering, it's okay to have a gap in your input, it's okay to coast because you are conserving tires. And at the end of the day, you're not going to make a move anyways. What's gonna kill your tires and also your pace is this. When you brake very late, very hard, spiking the brakes, 100% on the brakes, and also overlapping the throttle with the brake, as you can see here. This is something to be avoided. It's very simple once it's in your radar, but here, look again. This overlap and this spikiness under brake, even though the car can handle it because of the ABS, it's just gonna make it slower. Instead, we want to do what you're seeing in the right side of this comparison. You see, same corner, braking a tiny bit earlier, a tiny bit softer, but instead of peaking to 92, we're gonna peak to 76. It's a huge difference. So instead of braking hard, we're gonna brake softer and hold it for longer with no overlap in the throttle. If you look here, there's a bit of overlap going into the transition from the throttle to the brake, whereas here the overlap is a lot smaller. But managing the tires have a real purpose, and let's say you have a corner that leads to a big straight, exactly like this one right here. For a corner like this, it's super important to manage the rear tires because you need the thrust of the rear tires to push the car on the exit of the corner and make you gain time on the exit. So the rears are a lot more important. If you can do anything to ease off the rear tires, and I have in my sim racing course in the video description a lot of tips that you can do to prioritize rear tire management, you will be golden. Same with front tires for section where you have a lot of left right-handers. Suzuka S is a great example for this. You need the front tires alive. If you cook your front tires around here, you're gonna be losing a lot of lap time. While driving, you almost always have to ask yourself if your inputs are really needed or if you can get away with simplifying your line in order to avoid adding more inputs. For example, right here, look, this will be like a really good example around Sebring. There's this corner where we're taking the shortest path under the braking zone by going diagonally towards the corner. So instead of aligning ourselves with those cones and being parallel with the white line on the left side, we're going into the braking like this. You see, we're still pointing towards the cones and then we straighten up the car. And even though this is a bit harder because it will be a lot easier to just being parallel with the white line, we're doing the braking and overall we're using less steering wheel angle because if we would have aligned ourselves, first of all, we would have traveled a longer distance and making the line a bit slower, but also we would have used the steering wheel a bit more just to align the car. And in this way, we just brake straight diagonally towards the curb and then we use a bit of steering wheel angle, of course, but it's still a bit less than doing the opposite. And this is just a subtle little way of how top drivers are thinking about tire management. Now, these unnecessary inputs can be either understeer, oversteer, or tire lockups. You can even have micro lockups, which affects the tire performance. And it's very obvious with Formula cars because you don't have the ABS. For example, you can see when the tire is micro locking up if you pause it frame by frame, like I'm showing you now. And when that happens, the tire temperature will spike and you will have less grip. So in order to manage your front tires, or even the rear tires, doesn't really matter, you need to avoid those micro lockups. You need to avoid having moments of understeer or oversteer. But mistakes happen at all levels and it's impossible to avoid doing some mistakes from time to time. What's important in terms of tire management is recognizing that once you do a mistake and your tires are not in the best shape, you will have less grip in the next corner. So if in the next corner right now you're driving like nothing happened previously, you will just miss the corner. You will lock up, you will oversteer, understeer, you will push the tire past the limit, because now the limit is a lot lower if you do a mistake, and you will feel this all the time. If you overheat the tires a tiny bit, in iRacing specifically, it will punish you a lot and you will spin in the next corner, you will do a bigger mistake. So the takeaway is, if you're doing a mistake, if you're pushing the tire past the limit, remember to ease down in the next corner until the tire is cooling down. There's one simple way to check your tires. It's basically going into the pits, have this tire info black box popping out, and then once you park the car into the pits, you will see in real time what's the state of your tires. This only happens when you go into the pits. You can't see it on the track except in some cars, but you can also do it from Garage 61. In Garage 61, after you finish a stint and you go into the pits, you can see this little graphic around here which shows all the 3 layers of a tire, and you see the temperature and the tread remaining. It's a very nice feature in Garage 61. Remember, what gets tracked gets improved, and this is a tool for doing that. And I want to end with a couple of tips. If you're not sure you're using the tires as much as you think so, you can check the replay and look for tire marks. If you see tire marks, then of course you're pushing the tire more than you should. For example, here, when I'm doing these burnouts, you see this rubber, these tire rubber marks. If you see this while you brake and you go into a corner, you see that you paint the tarmac with black rubber. It means for sure you're pushing the tire more than you should. Also, you can bump the sound in iRacing so that you hear more the tires, and that sound is going to be really helpful, because if you hear the tire screeching, it means you're probably going past the limit and you're not managing really well the tires. All in all, these were the tips. Hope you like them, hope you enjoy them. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you find it useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.